Oh, and welcome back to another adventure at Kanji Geeks at Home 2022. Next up is Now This Is Podcasting with the fabulous Nick. I just wanted to do another shout out to our wonderful dealers. You should go check out the Dealers Room. You can either check it out on our Facebook group or you can check it out on our website, www.con-g.ca. So just come back to Nick. All right there, Nick. You can take it away.
All right, fantastic. Hello, everybody, and welcome to, let's see if I can do this correctly. Here we go. I'm on the wrong screen. Let's fix that. Now, this is what I call podcasting, now with 10% less wiggly air. I'm Nick T. I'm going to be your guide for the day as we discuss, as I describe, how you can start a podcast. Yeah. I've been podcasting for the last 7 years. I've done 3 different podcasts. The Next Cast, which was a general fandom podcast, Fanthropological, which is a podcast where every week we explore different fandoms, and the Zeal Archives, which is part discussion podcast and part audio drama. So I know things about wrangling wiggly air, and I'm going to help you learn how to do that today. And since there's a crap load of things to cover, I am going to be talking at a very brisk pace because we only have about 50 minutes. If you are doing YouTube or voice acting or streaming or audio dramas, there's also a chance that I might talk about things that are also of interest to you. If you have questions, leave them in the chat. I will try to get to them, but we'll see how fast I talk. Making a podcast. It's 5 easy steps. You just set up your podcast, do some stuff, and you're good to go. You do some planning, you do some recording, some editing, and then you have to release your podcast. This is a nice, concise way of looking at it. You know, there's some stuff you do once, great. Some stuff you do every episode, so I hope you like doing it. But actually, it looks probably something more like this, which is there's lots of different steps. I'm not going to read every single one here because I will probably go in more detail as we move along through this panel. It can be a lot of work. It definitely can be that, but it's also a lot of fun. We're going to do this thing where I like zoom in and zoom out and talk about the podcast setup, which is like the bare minimum you need to know, and then you can figure stuff out. And then I'm going to talk about how you figure stuff out. So let's keep moving. Setup. This is mostly on you. I cannot help you with most of these things. I mean, I kind of can, but the ball is more in your court. In journalism, these are like the five W's and H. You've probably seen it if you've ever learned about like news and stuff like that. These are questions you should ask yourself before you start a podcast. You don't need to have solid answers to them, but you should think about them a little bit. For example, why do you want to do a podcast? Is it because you want to learn a new skill like podcasting? Is it because you want to share your love of a video game or anime or something to that effect? Is it to meet people? Is it because you want to make money? I don't know. I don't know if I can help you if that is the last question. Who's going to be involved? Is it just you? Do you have a team of people working with you? Are you recording it? Are you editing it? I mean, you're probably recording it. I don't know how else you would do it. I mean, you could get a team of people. Anyway, what is the topic? What are you going to talk about? What is the format going to be? Are you doing an interview style where it's just you and somebody else talking about a thing? Is it a discussion? Is it a watch along or a read along? Is it an audio drama? Is it heavily scripted? And also, what are you going to call it? The first podcast that I did was called The Next Cast because it was myself and 2 other people named Nick. Is it the most inspired name? No, but people aren't going to mess that up. It's the podcast with the 3 Nick people on it. Those are kind of the questions. Oh, sorry. And then when? When is this going to happen? When are you going to work on it? I just realized it doesn't need to sound epic for that whole time. When are you going to work on this? When are you going to edit it? When are you going to record it? Podcasting takes time. I will dig into how much time it takes very soon. And how often, when are you going to release it? Are you going to do something weekly, monthly? Any pace is good. Pick something that you think you can do and keep to. The last two questions: where are people going to find my podcast, and how is it going to be made? That I'm hoping to have covered for you as we go through this panel. There's lots of different things. Like to record a podcast, you need some sort of a microphone, and there's lots of different microphones that you can get. There are expensive ones, there are cheap ones. The best tool is the ones that you have. So I have kind of lined up a bunch of different microphones here in terms of what I think will typically be noisier and ones that will typically give you cleaner audio. But honestly, whatever you have, you should use, unless you want to spend a little bit of money. So if you have inline microphone, which is usually attached to a headset, or a phone, or AirPods, or like even just your computer's mic or a headset, those will all work because you probably have them. Because getting something like this, this blue, it looks like a snowball. It's called the snowball. It's the blue snowball. It costs like $60, and the Yeti beside it costs like $120, and they go regularly on sale. But you know, if you don't have to spend the money and you don't have the money to spend, then don't. You can also get really expensive microphones. Audio quality does matter, but like if you're just getting started, use what you have. CK, woo, Nick. Yeah, I could talk a lot about microphones too, but that's probably not important if you're just getting started. So I'll keep us moving on. You also need something to edit a podcast with. I have listed a bunch of different tools that exist here. Oh, Chibi says, don't buy a USB if the computer you're going to buy doesn't have USB ports. Oh no, yeah. Laptops don't have a lot of ports anymore. Oh man. But for editing, mostly I list these because you might think of it as terms of like things on the left are things you start with, and maybe you move to the right because they tend to be more advanced. On the far left, we have Audacity, which is like, it's free, it's open source, it works on Linux, Windows, and Mac. You can use it everywhere, and pretty much everybody who isn't already doing some audio stuff gets started with it. It works. If you're in the Apple ecosystem, there's also GarageBand, which is this cool looking guitar gradient thing. I don't know very much about it, but it is another option. And then there's things like Zencastr, which is an online tool. It has a free plan. And then you don't need to have any software installed at all. It's just some web thing that you go and log into. If you have a little bit of money, there are some tools that are really good and have a one-time cost. There's Reaper and Hindenburg. And if for whatever reason you're already using, say, the Adobe suite of products and it's already part of the package, Adobe Audition is also really good, but it has a monthly fee and that gets really expensive. So we're not going to worry about that. But you should probably pick Audition, or Audacity, and then you have something to edit your podcast, because otherwise it's going to be hard to work on your podcast. Hosts. You need to put your podcast somewhere. There are lots of choices. There are so many choices. I've listed a handful of them here because choices are good. But also I've to highlight some of the free ones, because that's probably what you want to start with. Anchor, Spreaker, and Podbean all have free plans, which is really great to get started. Anchor is now owned by Spotify, so they can probably help you get started getting your podcast on Spotify. Spreaker, I think, is iHeartRadio, which is a different podcast directory. And Podbean is just like, they do good podcasting services. There's other services out there. Our podcasts, the ones that I work on, are on CastOS, which allows you an unlimited number of podcasts and an unlimited number of episodes, but you have to pay for it. Libsyn has been around for a while. And you can technically put your podcast on YouTube. They don't care. You'd have to make it a video, but it works, and you get free. People can find it easily because it's on YouTube, and YouTube's ubiquitous. I'm not going to talk about these too much because it's a personal choice. So just pick Anchor. Just start with that. It's fine. Let's talk. We're about to start an episode. You've done all that work. You have figured out what exactly your podcast is generally about. But you're starting to plan your episodes. The first thing you need to have is a plan. That plan can look like different things. It can be, if you're doing an audio drama, it can be a script. It can be a loose set of discussion points in a shared doc somewhere, or in a channel in Discord somewhere. It can just be a question or a simple topic to start off. CK, time for more work. There is no end to the amount of work that goes into creative projects. Have a plan. Start with that. It doesn't matter how detailed it is. But at the very minimum, know what your topic is and when you're going to be recording this. That's like the bare minimum. It's like, we are going to talk about anime. Is that broad? Yes, that's fine. Because you have somewhere to start from there. Relatedly, when you're talking about recording, there's this, make sure that everyone knows when you're going to start recording. Maybe you're doing a podcast with friends and you want to chat a bit beforehand. That's great. Let folks know this is when we're going to start talking, and this is when we're actually going to get to the business of recording. Because otherwise, it's like 10 o'clock at night and one of you might have to go to bed or take the dog out or the garbage out or whatever. And it's nice to have those things laid out ahead of time. Similarly, to say, we're going to record for 30 minutes, so you know how to plan your day. This is some basic stuff, but I'm going to lay it out here because it's actually surprisingly important. Quick tangent about batching and backlogs and things. If you can take all this work that you're doing, the recording or the editing or the planning, and just like smush it all together and do it at once, it can be pretty beneficial, because it means that you can like just block out a chunk of time and get it done, rather than like sprinkling it into your week with your other responsibilities. It's especially useful if you want to build a backlog of episodes. A backlog is just episodes that you have created that haven't been released. And that's great if something bad happens and you can't release an episode, or you're tired and you don't want to release an episode. All of those are good things to do. Last part of pre-production, I swear, before we start talking about the nitty-gritty of doing a podcast, the like recording and the editing and all the other stuff, make sure to warm up. I don't mean this in a recording sense. I mean, if you're starting a project with other people, especially people you may not know, you should get to know them as human beings. You should talk with them, learn more about them. If you're talking about guests, like do some research on them. Schedule some time to just chat as people, as humans, because it'll help with chemistry. It'll help to build up an understanding of how those people talk and how you talk and how you can talk together. And you can work on chemistry. It's a skill that you can learn, but I don't have time to talk about that. So we're going to keep going. Speaking of which, general tips about recording. Stay on topic. It makes for a better experience as people are listening along if you can keep to one point of discussion. Ren, let me explain. No, there's too much. Let me sum up. Yeah, that's how this panel is going to go. Yeah, stay on topic. Going on a tangent can be distracting, and it can be hard to follow along. And sometimes something that's interesting to you while you're having a discussion isn't interesting to listen to. What do I have time to talk about? We're doing broad strokes, ZK. Very broad strokes, high level. If you have specific questions, I will answer at the end. However, when you're making a show, it's your show. So how much you want to deviate from that is up to you. This is an appropriate time to talk about flubs and things like that. So this probably may not make any sense to you. This is an audio waveform. Specifically, this is lines that I recorded for an audio drama. Sometimes when you're recording, you make mistakes. And the nice thing about recording, as compared to what we're doing right now, is if you make a mistake, you can stop, pause, and just re-say the thing that you're doing. If I was live on air right now and said a bunch of verbal audio garbage, I can't take that back. I can't do anything about it. It is out there in the world. But if you're recording, there are some things that you can do to make it easier to correct. So as I said, you can go back and re-say the thing you're doing. You can also, in this audio file, these are snaps. These are points where I went, and they leave this nice line where I can see where I made a noise. And when you do that, it's easier to go back in editing. You're like, oh, this is marking something. So I have an indication of what it's for. When you do that, you can also use it for pretty much any oopsie. Maybe you had a long conversation with somebody and it got to a dead end and you're like, crap, I don't know how to continue this. So you like snap and you can say a thing to connect to some earlier point and just keep moving on. If you go on a long tangent, I guarantee you won't remember where you started, but you can always just snap, and then when you're editing, you're like, oh, the tangent ends here. It's like, I'll figure out where it started, but it ends here, and I can cut from here and move back. Pretty great. Filler words. People have filler words. It's unavoidable. These are words like oh, okay, etc. They're not a bad thing. We use them all the time. They are used because our brain is trying to catch up with our mouths. We're trying to think of what we want to say, but we haven't quite got to that point yet. Point one of this is just keep in mind that you have these. The other point that I want to make is that you can kind of work on this. You can kind of avoid using filler words. In particular, if you just slow down. Yeah, Rin's got it right. Our brains are buffering. One way to help with avoiding filler words at the recording stage is to just slow down a tiny bit. I'm doing it right now. I am deliberately pausing a little bit between my words so that I don't use filler words. CK, but I don't want to. You don't have to. You can keep them in. You can edit them out later. But if you want to keep them out in the first place, just slow down. All right. More stuff about recording. There is so much about recording. Yeah, Dan, I was thinking exactly that. Fork you and kick him in the energy legs. Yeah. There's some other problems about recording. When you're recording by yourself, everything is easy because you can do whatever you want. You can record as many times as you like. You can go back, re-say things. Great. Recording with other people, more challenging. Biggest problems? Over talking, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's when I try to talk over you or vice versa. If you're in person or if you have video, like a situation like now, there are subtle body language cues that people can give to indicate that they might want to say something, which helps to prevent overtalk. You can raise your hand. You can be back in grade school and say, hey, teacher, I would like to say a thing. You can generally give some sort of nonverbal signal that you want to say things. Overtalk isn't always preventable, but you can kind of do things to give an indication and reduce the amount of overtalk. There's also some problems recording in person versus online. If you're recording things in person, like if I had two other people here and we were trying to record something, you probably only have one microphone. And that means that whatever is recorded, whatever wiggly air is trapped in the electronic prison of your hard drive, it's stuck there. Like, good luck editing it out. There's three people talking at the same time. It's trapped. That's all you got. I mean, you could, if you can get 3 separate recording setups, great. That's really involved. And you probably don't have that. I have a mixer over there, so I could probably do that, but it's still a lot of work. If you're doing things online, you have a much easier time because you usually have 3 separate or multiple recording setups, and everybody can have their own copy of the track. Ideally, that's how you want to do recording. You want to have a situation where everyone has their own recording for their own voice. Sometimes that's hard to do. There's this technique called double ending, which you can do online, which is where you take a local recording of yourself. So I have this recording here, and then you have a recording of everyone, kind of like what's happening on Twitch right now, except there's no other audio going on. If you are talking with other people doing your podcast using something like Discord, there's a bot called Craig. I think it's craig.chat. And it will record the call for you, which is great. It means you have your own voice, which sounds buttery sweet, and then this other recording, which is in case things go wrong, or also to just sync things up. And that's pretty good. If you're recording, if you don't want to do something like that, or you're having other problems, you can do synchronization, which is like one person can make it, again, like a snap or something like that, but you take your headphone and you bring it up to your microphone, and then whenever somebody snaps or makes a loud noise, it'll show up on your recording. And then when you go to the editing phase, everyone will have like a snap at the same point. That's pretty cool. Another reason why headphones are great, and I think people have shown this as we're going through Kanji today, Sometimes if you have speakers, that noise just bleeds into your microphone, and then people hear you, which is great, and they also hear whatever is going on in your speakers, which is not necessarily great. So headphones good. Oh wow, I am blitzing this. All right, I'm going to take my own advice and slow down. Recording. We're going to talk a little bit about technical stuff, but not a ton because I am not an audio engineer. First, warm up. Say some words. No, go faster. I don't know if I can keep up with that. You want to warm up. You want to have your voice ready to speak, especially if you're doing something like a panel. You're going to be talking for an hour or a half an hour, or what have you, and you don't want to like your voice to crack or what have you in the middle. Relatedly, hydrate, because you probably also are not drinking enough water, and drinking water is good for the human body, so I am told. So those things are important. You also want to make sure that you record in a quiet, consistent space. Quiet because you don't want noise in the background, and consistent because if there are any problems, they're easy to fix in multiple run-throughs of things. If you happen to be in a space that has a lot of hard surfaces, this example is ridiculous. Nobody has like a cube. If you have a cube room, like I want to do this bullhorn thing. That's kind of cool. What the picture is demonstrating is this thing called reverberation, which is like hard surfaces, audio bounces off, and it comes back in your microphone, and it sounds bad, and it's hard to edit out. I'm in an old house, so all the walls are like, all walls are hard, and there's like a wall of monitors in front of me, and the floor would be hardwood. And that's not a good situation for recording. You can fix that. I have curtains here. On the floor, I have a carpet, but you don't need to do anything fancy like that. One option is to buy like a recording cube. You just put your microphone inside it, and then that helps to dampen all the noisiness. You can also make this if you buy some acoustical foam, or if you have like a IKEA cube, or you can buy one from the dollar store. Maybe you can make this if you want, except for the microphone. If you can make a microphone, you know more about audio engineering than I do. You can also do a really extremely low tech but extremely comfy solution, and possibly really warm solution, which is just use blankets. Blankets are great at dampening sound, and like you don't need acoustic panels around your room or anything. You just cover yourself in a blanket. It's great. I would recommend everybody get cozy within a blanket. I'm also going to do some of that. Blanket fort recording booth. Exactly. I mean, not everybody has a recording. If you have a closet, you can just put a blanket over your head too. Quick, really bad science lesson. A lot of audio stuff works on this principle called the inverse square law, which you may remember from science class, or maybe you don't, because I barely do. The short version is that close up sound loud, far away sound I can't hear you. Put in a more useful way, you'd think like, oh, if I get 2 times further away, it gets 2 times quieter. No, if I go 2 times further away, it gets 4 times quieter. So right now, and with your microphone too, is probably, you want to be pretty close to it, about 15 centimeters, or like, I don't know, the length of your hand, like this. Because the further away you get, it gets a lot quieter really fast. If somebody was standing over to my right, they'd be really hard to hear. And if they were in another room, obviously you couldn't hear them at all. And that's just the inverse square law at work. An important thing to keep in mind related to that is mics don't grab sound out of the air. They just feel the vibe and record it. So yeah, you want to get pretty close to your microphone, but not too close, because then when you're loud, it's really, really loud. 15 centimeters or like this much. Depends on your mic, but it's the sweet spot. Man, do I want to go through this part? Yeah, okay, let's talk about this. Actually, I'll talk about this in a second. Everybody get cozy, yeah. You should also, for your recording setup, get a pop screen. I don't know how well anybody can see this, but there's a pop screen in front of my microphone right now. It's basically like a little armature. That part's not as important. And a little piece of fabric. All that it's doing is to break. Hello, Agus. All it's doing is breaking the sound. You can think of it as certain sounds like p and d and things like that have a kamehameha of sound energy that is beaming towards your microphone. And the pop filter is the Krillin that is going to block all the blasts. I don't know. It's deferring the sound. They're relatively inexpensive. You can pick one up for $15. You can make one with a coat hanger. You can and some nylons. That works. An extremely low tech solution is you can just put your finger in front of your mouth or a pencil or a pen or whatever, and it just like breaks the sound. It works pretty well. But like, if you don't do that, you end up with these like weird, really loud sound. It just doesn't sound good. That's the short version. Right. What we have on screen. When you're recording, this is an example from an Audacity. Audacity is an open source audio editor. You're going to see your voice go up and down on these bars. These are the same bars, just presented vertically and horizontally. They're indications of how loud, generally, your voice is. Does the scale make any sense? No, that's fine. The closer things are to 0, the more likely they are to clip. Clipping is when the wiggly air cannot be recorded. Your microphone is vibrating so much it can't understand the words that are coming out of your mouth. So when you're recording, there's like a magic range of volume that you want to try to hit. It's generally about -20 to -10. The reason for that is there's enough volume from you to make a distinction between you and the background. That is anything else that's going on in your room. Right now, I can hear, even through my headphones, or outside of my headphones, like there's a hum from my computer, there's possibly road noise, there's the air conditioner, the heater, depending on the time of year. If you're in that level, then there's enough distinction between you and the background, and you're also not too loud, because what you can do is you can digitally make yourself louder afterwards. Yeah. What is... Oh, yeah. So that's recording in a nutshell at a breakneck pace. Let's finally talk about editing. Editing is a lot. There are people that are much better at this than I am, but it's important to keep in mind how editing relates to recording. Compared to how long you've recorded, it can take between 2 and 4 times to edit the words that you said. That means that if you decided, oh man, we should have this great 2-hour conversation about One Piece, and that's fine, except that that could take you up to 8 hours to edit after the fact. And that's for something simple, like a discussion between you and a few other people. Having watched Dan, Dan is a video ninja. Video editing takes even longer. But as an example, like I'm going to play just a very short clip from the discussion part of a podcast that I do to get a sense of what it sounds like. And then I'll tell you a little bit more about how long that took. With me, as always, is my good friend, Nick G.
I'm recording this from the bath. That's what we're doing, right?
Yeah, fire and water, hot tub, hot springs. This is the beach episode.
Yep. And I'm pretty sure my microphone is not going to fall in. So I think we're good to go.
Yeah, and that was the last we ever heard of him, unfortunately. No, he's fine. He is fine. Nothing bad happened. I swear it. That is from a clip that was maybe 25 minutes of discussion, and it took like an hour and a half to edit. That's like 3.6 times. That is a lot. Eka says we stream for an hour and it takes 4 hours. Yeah. So the point that I'm driving home here is like, think about the kind of show you want to make and how long you want to record. A different example, and you might have something more complicated. You might have an audio drama and you have multiple voice actors and a bunch of sound effects and some background music. That might sound something like this.
Now, bow and pay homage to our new lieges, King Dalton and Empress Azala.
What is this? What's going on?
So that clip is from 8 minutes of audio drama, and that took 9 hours to edit. That is a factor of like 50 times. So the reason that I point this out is because you should think about the kind of thing you want to make and how long it takes before we even talk about the actual editing part, which is what I'm about to dive into right now. I'm also going to have some water. Okay, let's talk about editing at a very high level, just the basics. Great tip, just life tip in general. Be gentle with yourself. There's only one of you, and you're important, and you matter. So be gentle with yourself. Relevant to editing, however, there's two parts. One is, especially if this is your first time editing anything, like you're learning the audio editor, whatever you make is not going to be probably how you want it to be. You might have expectations that are not met. And so that's okay, because you're learning. It's okay. It's fine. The other reason I bring up being gentle with yourself is because if you are recording and editing your own podcast, you're going to learn that you're going to hear a lot of your own voice. And you might not like that. I hope that if you make a podcast, that you learn to love your own voice. Partly because you're going to hear a lot of it. But also I just hope in general, because like it's you and you're like it's you. You should love yourself. Yeah, take care of yourself. Sorry, this got really, really emotional for a second. But because you're going to be hearing a lot of yourself, be gentle with yourself. You're going to hear it a lot. I hate hearing my voice. Yeah, I mean, I've done at this point over 200 episodes of podcasts, so I'm just like, it's that jerk again. All right, let's zoom past this. Other tips: edit at high speed. One of the things that you do a lot of during editing is just listening back to the same section over and over again until you get it right, and then you kind of shuffle ahead a bit, and that pattern repeats. That takes up a lot of time. So if you can edit faster, all the better. You would think, if I'm editing at a higher speed, does that mean I'm missing out on details? And the answer is possibly. But if you're editing at something like 1.5 speed, many editing programs allow you to either adjust the playback speed or adjust the duration of the audio. Then you can still catch a lot of major problems, but you also save a little bit of time. Oh, seeing a lot of voice related thoughts in the chat. Oh my. Yeah. Other things about editing, this is mostly an opinion on my part. Cut aggressively. As I mentioned earlier, there could be parts that you think sound great, they're really funny, and they're hilarious, and you want to keep them in. They might not sound as great after the fact. They might have felt very good when you were talking, and might not sound so great later. This can be for things like tangents that you think are hilarious, or overtalk. You might notice things like stuttering or filler words. You can cut those. I think you should cut those. There might be bloopers that you really enjoyed. I would still suggest cutting them, but you can keep them for other purposes, other nefarious purposes that I will bring up in a little bit. Filler words are all I have, Nick. Like, I don't know what to tell you, ZK. Learn your editor. This is twofold. One, because there's lots of editors and I definitely don't know all of them, and I can't tell you all the tips and tricks. I've memorized a bunch of keyboard shortcuts for Adobe Audition because that makes me more productive. But the other reason to learn your editor really well is because it means that you can make better podcasts, you can make podcasts faster. One thing that I use all the time in Adobe Audition, which I'm sure is available in many other tools, is it has presets. So one thing is you can say, this is my project. It always has this many tracks. And so like just make a project. Great. It also has a feature where you can say, this is a track. It always has these audio settings. So I always record in pretty much the same setting. And it's like, yeah, we'll do this to make Nick's voice sound deeper. We'll do this to remove any background noise. And it always does that. And it's fantastic. And there's lots of tools like that that exist in your editor. And that's why learning them is helpful. Rin, what's the phrase? Kill your darlings. That, I think, is exactly the phrase. The other thing that can be useful, and it depends, maybe you have a really quiet space, so it works pretty well. Many editors have a feature called noise removal. So if you record the room tone, which is that background noise that I described before, like before you start talking in your podcast, if you record just a few seconds of just background noise, you have this room tone, then you can use the noise removal tool to kind of remove that from your podcast. You effectively select one section. It's like, this is what normal noise sounds like. And you're like, apply it everywhere. And you can usually adjust how much it works at, how much work it does. And it'll remove the background noise. It's incredible math is really the short way of doing it, because it is math. It really is math. If it's too aggressive, it can often create like a robotic voice. But if it's applied just a little bit, then it sounds pretty good. You can also use room tone in general to just fill in silences. Like maybe you cut, like there was a big section of dialogue and you've trimmed it down and you want to like fill in something so that it sounds natural. Like this is what we actually said instead of this is how I Frankensteined the audio together. You can just go in and put some room tone in there. There's also some really advanced editing. There was this really great thread on Twitter that explained this, and it got my brain a-thinking. Audio engineers know all of this stuff. I'm not an audio engineer, but I can describe these things at a pretty high level. These are also things that you probably want to apply to your voice when you're doing the editing. But I will go through them to give some context. So one technique that you can use is compression. Effectively, you take all of the loud noises and bring them down to a lower level. That is super useful and it's used all the time, especially if there's going to be a lot of variation in how loudly you're speaking. I don't think I have a compressor set on right now, so you're just going to have to deal with it. Noise gates. Noise gates generally cut off audio that is below a certain threshold. So oftentimes, like, especially if you're having a conversation, you might want a noise gate to activate when you're not talking. Implicitly, I think things like Google Hangouts and whatnot do this. So when your voice is below a certain threshold, it just like stops. It just cuts out the audio. Normalization. This is effectively just bring all the audio to a particular level. Although I think pretty much every editor has a function like that. I also like how the text is like, even if you don't know what's going on, you can kind of get a sense for it. Even for yes, this can also be good if you have audio for masks and things like that. De-Esser. I don't use this too much, but S sounds sound bad. It creates a thing called sibilance. Anyway, but a de-esser does what it says. It removes S's. There's also reverb. Usually you don't want to add reverb because it's kind of like stylistic, but it makes the air extra wiggly. You can make it sound, using reverb can make your voice or your audio sound like it is in a particularly shaped space, like a small cellar or a big drum of things. It's kind of neat. Echo. People know what an echo is. Probably in your podcast, you don't want to do this, but it could be useful for an audio drama. EQ is equalization, and like technically it's about adjusting the frequencies of different bands of audio, but generally you take the audio and it sounds different, and it's really hard to describe that. Lastly, there's mastering. Mastering is magic. I mean, what mastering actually is it's making your audio sound good, whether it's on headphones, speakers, in your car, on your TV, etc. But that is like really audio engineering stuff, so I don't know what is going on there. Last step, episode launch, Hashin. This is pretty easy. you've done it. You planned your episode, you recorded it, you edited it, you have an MP3, and you're ready to put it out in the world. And you probably found a host. You've also got that. You're good. You're like, let's do this. Let's put it in the world. Launch is easy. You just upload your episode. Maybe write some show notes. Show notes are just, hey, this is what happened in the episode. Here's a summary of the things that we talked about. Maybe here's some links to resources that were mentioned in the episode. Pretty straightforward. Hashtags, depending on the platform that you're posting this on. You might not have that option within your host, but definitely when you're doing things on social media, absolutely. Transcriptions are really cool. I mention them here because they're great for accessibility and for people finding your podcast. A transcription is taking the audio of your podcast and putting it into text. The reason I don't talk about it too heavily is because either you have to do it yourself, which is very time consuming, or you have to pay someone to do it. And I'm assuming that you, like me, do not have necessarily the money to pay on transcriptions. But it is pretty useful. And then relax, you did it. Well, almost. You should also probably put your podcast on different podcast directories. This is something you only need to do once. This is things like Apple Podcasts, which is, I think, the biggest one. It has an approval process, so do this first. This is also, this is work you only have to do once. Spotify is another good place to list your podcast. Google Podcasts is not as big as the other two, but also pretty big. And Stitcher, if you feel like it. Most of the time, your host will like have a button or a resource that's like makes it really easy to do this. But even if not, it's not super hard to do. Okay, so you made a podcast and it's released and like you want people in the world to see it and you want to grow your podcast, I guess. You definitely want to post on social media and ask people questions and ask snippets. Okay, I'm going to be completely honest here. I'm really bad at promotion. So it's not that I don't know anything, but I'm going to list the tips, especially if you're an introvert like I am. What are your feelings about adding podcasts to YouTube with random images on it? I think that's fine. They're harder to find on podcast directories, but like a good way people put it to me is that like putting podcasts in podcast directories is like makes things accessible to podcasters. Putting podcasts on YouTube makes them accessible to literally everyone else, because they're kind of like two separate groups of people, kind of. Yeah. With regard to social media, I'll give the advice that I have, which is as an introvert and as somebody who has a really hard time promoting themselves, do what is most comfortable for you. Use the networks that you use, whether that be like TikTok or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or what have you, and don't worry about the numbers. That's really important. Remember why you're doing this. If you're doing it to meet people, then like maybe social media matters a little bit more. If you're doing it because you want to just say, I love this thing and throw it out there, that's what you do. Have friends who promote for you? Absolutely. Thank you. I definitely have a handful of people that are like that in my life and appreciate them for that. Posting something once on social media is better than never, but people probably still won't see it. So you have to promote your stuff constantly over and over again if you want people to see it. Best way is word of mouth. Absolutely. Not paid ads. Not all social media posts need to be about your podcast. You can post snippets, you can do behind the scenes stuff. If you have guests on the show, you can cross promote them. You can just thank people that helped you out with the podcast. It doesn't always have to be about you, and probably shouldn't always be about you. What else do I have here? This is a tip for conventions. If you're ever at a convention that has a panel about social media, anything, go to it. If you're interested in learning more about social media, because even if it's not about podcasting, you will probably learn something. I've gone to numerous podcasting for cosplayers panels and written many notes that I've not followed through on, but I've learned things from that. And those are pretty much always happening. You can also use apps like Headliner. Earlier I was talking about like, what if there's something cool that I made that I don't think should be in the episode, but I want to keep because it's fun. You could make snippets and post them on your social media. There's an app called Headliner that will help you to make short little videos. And so like, here's an example of one I made around Halloween with some slight modifications from what ended up in an episode.
Oh, and your ears! Are they natural?
It's a costume for the fair.
Oh, you were one of those.
There's nothing wrong with dressing up. It takes a lot of time and effort to get the details right. And it's fun. For just a moment, you can be anyone. And it doesn't matter to me if no one else likes it.
Yeah, so they make it really easy to make stuff like that. There are other sites that do that, and it's free. You can do like 10 videos a month or something, so that's kind of cool. All right, what else we got? Guessing. Sometimes you're doing a podcast and you're like, hey, I want to talk to cool people. Or I want cool people to talk to me. I had to find a whole bunch of. I found out that there's a whole Sailor Moon site for all the Deke dub stuff. Sorry, that's its own rabbit hole. My tip, if you want to do any of this stuff, is to ask. This seems really silly, but it's true. Provided you're not trying to talk to like, I guess I describe them as A-list celebrities like Mark Hamill or something like that. Most people are pretty responsive and receptive to like joining or talking with you on a podcast, or at least pretty receptive. If you find a polite way to reach out to people, like a public email address or something like that, and explain why you'd like to have them on your show, what you were trying to do, give them a short, reasonable time commitments, like, hey, could we talk for like 20-30 minutes about whatever? And you're trying to reach people that are not that large, they'll probably say yes, or at least you'll hear back and you'll have some information. Maybe they'll even be able to refer you to somebody who could be a better fit for your show. One time I was at London Comic Con here in Ontario, or was it Forest City? I think it was Forest City Comic Con in London. And I had the chance to talk to the original English voice actor of Sailor Moon and interview her during a lull during a signing. And that was pretty neat because all that I did was I had my equipment, I asked nicely, and she was just like, yeah, let's do this. CK says, I've been a podcast guest for a few times. The ones I like most are people who do the... Exactly. And if you're going to have somebody on the show, you should definitely do some research on them so that you know a bit about their background. If you want to be a guest on somebody's podcast, my recommendation would be also to ask, but also find podcasts that are about similar sizes as you that have had people on their show before, and then do the same. Ask. In either case, the more that you do your podcast, the more you build up a history of doing cool work. The more people you have on your show, the easier it's going to be because they're going to be like, oh yeah, I might have heard of your show. Or more likely it's like, oh, you've got a lot of episodes. It's not too bad. I've also asked to be guests to promote. Yeah. As an example, so Fanthropological, we did a podcast where every episode we covered a different fandom, and we talked with lots of different people. Here are 10 of the different guests that we had on the show at different times. Of the 40 or so guests that we had Epic Film Guys who talked about movies. We had Fry Kaiser who talked about Vampire Chronicles, Reality Bomb, which is a Doctor Who podcast. I can't remember, this is Halo related though. I think it's the Halo podcast. We had the Ontario Ghostbusters to talk about Ghostbusters, Pod's Burgers to talk about Bob's Burgers, SM Zelda Rules to talk about Nier and the Drakengard series, Star Wars Minute to talk about Star Wars, the Real Weird Sisters to talk about Harry Potter, and a podcast of Ice and Fire to talk about Game of Thrones. And we were just like, hey, do you want to be on our podcast? And they're like, yeah. It was that easy. These aren't like super big name people, but we're very friendly, and people are pretty approachable. That was me rambling for a long time, which slowed down towards the end, which is good because that means there's time for questions. And you've got questions. I've got word salad, lots of words that I can maybe provide some insight for folks that are listening and watching along. Coffee Shot 87 says a good conversation is often better than a celeb. Yes, I would 100% agree with that. I'm going to scroll up to the chat because I think there were some questions that I might have not dodged, but like I was rushing through my words. Slow down. Yep. Let's see what else. Water bottle. It is an Erlenmeyer flask, as I'm quite fond of it. It's very hard to tip over and spill over my electronics. Everybody get cozy. Dan and editing. The theme of today, you want to do something. It's going to take time. That's important. I did not take a screenshot of the work that I did on the Zeal archives, but it's a podcast. This last season is like 10 episodes. They're like 40-minute episodes, and it took like, I don't know, 200 or 300 hours. It was a lot. A lot about voices. Oh, let's get down to the bottom. You've got questions? I've got word salad. Yeah. If folks don't have questions, I'm trying to think if there's any. I'm just going to quickly take a look because there was some stuff. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to see if there's something else that I had forgotten to. I mean, there's this. This is just a general piece of advice for everybody. Perfect is the enemy of done. Was written by some smart person, probably. That's how podcasting works. You're constantly iterating. You're making something so that you have something. It'll never be perfect, but you learn and you grow. No, that's not important. Yeah, that's all I got. So thank you, everyone so much. Do you read the thesaurus? No, I make up words on my own. So you can find the better words. No, I have the best words. I do not have the best words. Yeah, that's all I got. So thank you, everybody. I don't know how this works. Yeah, reading a thesaurus is an act of punishment. Oh my. Oh, I think you're muted. No, wait, I can hear hissing. That's right.
Yeah, you can hear me now. Thank you so much, Nick. That was amazing. That was a very, very, very important panel. Come on, guys. Questions for Nick while we have him for another 5 minutes.
Yeah, you can ask me anything about podcasting. I will frantically go through my other random notes if people have things. One thing that I couldn't figure out. Nick, what do you have in your pockets? I have a Ridge wallet, some keys, and maybe a receipt from groceries. Can you come back next year and do 2 panels? What would you like in each of the panels? Do you want more, like, I rushed through everything to give a high level, but do you want, like, more technical? Do you want more general? Do you want me to just show clips of my podcast? Because I would be glad to do that. Hi, Violet. I can say hi to your dog, CK. Oh, it's CK's dog.
I was like, so Nick, advertise for yourself. Tell them the podcast that you do.
Yeah, that was the one slide that I cut out because I was like, crap, I'm not going to have enough time. Yeah, I'm Nick. I'm part of a group called the Nick's Cast, which is 3 Nicks. We make stuff. The primary things that we do are right now the Zeal Archives, which is a Chrono Trigger podcast covering the A to Z of the world of Chrono Trigger. It is part audio drama, part discussion, 100% love of a classic JRPG from the mid-90s. You should definitely check it out, even if you don't like Chrono Trigger, because the audio drama is really fun and has a lot of voices you might recognize, like maybe Dan, the Video Ninja, or Momo, or people like that. I also do an annual charity event called The Race Against Time, which raises money usually for a trans lifeline. It happens in August, date to be determined this year, and we try to beat Chrono Trigger in under 24 hours and get all of its 13 different endings, which is a lot of
Oh my god.
stuff. Yeah. Oh, Podcasting 102 and Podcasting Bloopers. Okay, I can probably make that work. Kanji Summer Edition, more panels. Yeah, those are the things that I do. I also stream weekly, twitch.tv/The Race Against Time, usually playing through random JRPGs or other short games. Right now going through I Am Setsuna, which is kind of like Chrono Trigger, but it's incredibly tropey and it's still fun. And I do voice acting during it, and it's me being a goof 100% of the time. Oh, and Ren's constantly linking. Yeah, there we go.
Unfortunately, the link didn't come through because we have a thing on the sidebar, so it just came in as 3 little stars. I think she tried to link to your thing.
That's okay.
So I was like, so you'll have to give it to me so I can share it, or one of the mods can share it.
Yeah. Also, if anybody had really specific questions that they don't feel comfortable asking on stream, they can ask in the Discord. Yeah, there we go, the Discord. And I'll do my best to answer because I glazed over a bunch of topics at a high level. And that is okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Big round of applause. Yay! All right. Thank you very much.